Okay. Thank you all for joining and appreciate the patience as we just needed to troubleshoot a few technical issues before we got started. So I just wanted to introduce myself and then I will move on to the agenda and introduce our panel. So my name is Jenny Morgan. I'm a facilitator for FinEquity, and we are very happy to be co-hosting this webinar this morning with MEDA. I think you all know the topic we're discussing today, but it's talking about measuring women's economic empowerment through increased financial inclusion. And we'll be discussing the process we went through for developing the indicators and most importantly, sharing the indicators and the measurement framework. And then the bulk of our session, and I'll go ahead and we can move to the next slide on the agenda. Thanks, Sophia. Okay, one housekeeping here. Today we have interpretation, Spanish and English. One of our panelists will be speaking in Spanish. And if some of you speak Spanish, there's an opportunity to ask questions in either language. So if you haven't used Zoom interpretation before, this slide explains to you what to do. You need to go down to the globe or the circle that has languages at the bottom and select your preferred language between English and Spanish. In addition, and this is very important, we'll keep reminding you, but you need to also click in that same circle, mute original audio. If you don't, you're going to hear multiple voices and it will be distracting. So please go ahead and select your channel and also click mute original audio. If at any point you have issues with your, accessing, seeing the screen, anything, the interpretation, please feel free to just post that in the chat and we will help you troubleshoot. Okay, next slide. All right. This is our agenda for today. I've already welcomed you all. I'm going to get to introductions in just a minute, and we have a quick little poll for the audience. As I mentioned, today we're going to be presenting the framework and indicators for measuring WE and financial inclusion that FinEquity through our work at CGAP was able to convene a group of many folks that contributed to this effort over the past few years. So we'll be discussing that. And then, as I mentioned, the partners will then, 3 of our partners from MEDA, Women's World Banking, and Banco Sol, who participated in the testing and refining of the indicators, will be presenting about their experience and where they are and what's next. And then we'll have a good 15 minutes at least for audience Q&A and to hear from you all. Right now, I would like to ask, because we don't have time for all of us to introduce ourselves with 160 folks online, you can please, in the chat, just type your name. If you want to share your LinkedIn profile so people can connect afterwards and during this session, that would be great. And then this is just something fun, it's optional. But if you'd like to share a current feeling, starting with the first name, the first letter of your first name. So I gave an example here. My name's Jenny, feeling joyful today. I'm many other feelings, but I'm going to select one. There's no wrong feeling. Anything is acceptable. Feel free to use emojis or not. And again, optional, but just something fun. So please go ahead and start, introducing yourselves while we welcome more folks. I know we had an early start, so there's still some folks joining. And I think we can move great. So while you're all thinking of your feelings, introducing yourselves, I had a poll for the audience. And I'm just going to read it out. So does your organization or the organizations that you support currently measure women's economic empowerment in financial inclusion? And the interpreters will be giving you that question in Spanish as well. You have a couple options. No, what is we? Not yet, but we'd like to start. or you're measuring some aspects, but you'd like to measure more. I'll give you a minute. Okay. Let's see, we've got 98 responses. I think 100, I'll give it 10 more seconds. There's, no wrong answer, just like no wrong feeling. Okay. Um, all right. I think we're gonna go ahead and close the poll, please, Sarah. And if you didn't get a chance, you can put it in the chat if you'd like, but if you could go ahead and display the results, that'd be great. Sorry, yeah, thank you. Sarah can display the results. Oh,
yes,
I can see them. You're right. Sorry, I was expecting it to be on the slide. Haven't had enough coffee this morning. So let's see. It looks like we have about the majority of folks, I'll say 64% said they are measuring some aspects of we, but would like to measure more, which is great. And that's exactly why we're here. 23% said no, but you'd like to start. Also great. Willingness is there. We're all here to learn. And then 13% no, what is we? That's fine. We will talk about we a lot today. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll have a better sense of what we is and how to measure. So thank you, Sarah. We'll go ahead and move on to introductions. Perfect. Just a bit before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to say a word about FinEquity. It's a community of practice that works on women's financial inclusion. Anyone can join, individuals, organizations. It's open to everyone. There is a very strong chapter in the Latin America, Caribbean region, as well as in the Africa region, but it is a global network. So my colleague will share a link. If you're interested in signing up for the newsletters, please do, and you can keep an eye on future events like this. Again, we're co-hosting this with MEDA, which is very exciting, and you'll get to hear from them very soon, but I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers. Okay. Starting with AJ Navziger. She's from MEDA, which is the Mennonite Economic Development Associates. She's the Sustainability and Inclusion Lead at MEDA. She's based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and they focus on contributing to MEDA's thought leadership and implementation of gender and environment mainstreaming strategies across international programs. And apologies for looking at my other screen, but I can't have everything up at once. And you have on the event page a link to everyone's full bio. So and you can connect with us on LinkedIn. I'd like to then go to Denise. Denise is at Banco Sol. She is the sorry, this is a little bit out of order, but she currently serves as the National Deputy Manager of Sustainability and CSR at Banco Sol in Bolivia, and she's joining us today from La Paz. And our third panelist is Justin Archer. He's the lead for global outcomes research, and where he works on rigorous evaluations of impacts of women's world banking's financial solutions on financial inclusion and women's economic empowerment. And the three of them have been great partners on this process, and I really appreciate all of them making the time to present and share today. So moving on to the next slide. Great, thank you. And now I'm going to just dive in here. Please move forward, Sophia. Next slide. Okay, thank you so much. Oops, there we go. All right, so as I mentioned at the top, I wanted to share a little bit of background on the process that we went through to develop the common set of indicators. This was a process that started back in 2022. We convened a rather large group of folks that were interested in this topic, were doing work on this topic, but wanted to do more and wanted to contribute to a collective effort to create a common set of indicators that could be shared and used more widely by the industry, the financial inclusion sector. At that time, we had a really long list of indicators. I did a mapping of, I don't know, I think 18 different sets of indicators, and came up with a heat map to identify where were the most common indicators. But that process also taught us that just because something isn't there, perhaps, financial health, resilience, doesn't mean it's not important. It's just that there weren't necessarily many indicators related to that topic at the time. So we also took a look at what was missing, where were the gaps, and why it was important to address some of those gaps. And then we needed to test them and refine them. So this is what we called the collab. It was a collaborative learning process that lasted over a year. We had 7 partners. And through this work with IPA as a partner, they helped us to really test the feasibility of the indicators, narrow down by creating a questionnaire that would then be used in different contexts by different organizations. There was an enumerator guide, a code book, a lot of guidance that you can find in the paper. My colleague will share that in the link. But it was really through this process that we figured out, okay, there were some questions that perhaps didn't make sense. There was some additional guidance that we needed to give to the enumerators. The code book needed to get tweaked because some things didn't make sense. So it was really a collaborative effort. And through that, we were able to refine all of the tools as well as the indicators and be able to put something out that had actually been used in a real world setting. This was the third column, really. Is what I was describing. So the partners each selected where they were going to test, went through this whole process of training enumerators, collecting the data, cleaning it, and then calculating their indicators. We in the collab were only able to test at one point in time. So the idea for this is to test at multiple points, but we're going to hear today really about that initial test and how it's going to be used by the partners going forward. We can go to the next slide. Okay, this just gives you a sense of the theory of change that we developed prior to fleshing out the indicators, and it gives you a visual here on how theory of change and these indicators contribute to WE outcomes. I'll pause here for a second just to let you take a look. Okay. And then I think we can move to the next slide because this is in the paper. The paper really leaned heavily on this measurement framework, this kind of how-to, and there's a source from my colleague that facilitated the collab with me, Joanna Ledgerwood, and she worked with Gareth Davies on this. But the idea is that you're mapping the causal pathways of your intervention to figure out what are the indicators that you want to measure, and then you develop a measurement plan, you collect the data, and you calculate the indicators and use that data. This is the process that we went through as well, but this was just to give you some overview and background of how we got to where we were. And we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. This is, I think, what folks have been waiting for. Again, it's in the paper. I'll pause for a minute. I do just want to call out the headings here. So there's many ways to organize these indicators, but this is one slice of it where you're looking at what are the things that matter for women's economic empowerment. It's access to resources or opportunities that women have. So we're looking at things like the percentage of women participating in income generating activities, or the percentage of women who feel confident in using financial products. I'm not going to read all of them, but I will give a few examples here. The other key element is agency. So, the percentage of women that are able to make financial decisions without having to consult others. The percentage of women who participate in household financial decisions. And then there's, this has the bulk of the indicators. And, you can see through, 5 through 13 here, we're looking at the percentage of women who set and pursue goals. And this is self-reported information. But the idea is that you're going to measure this, at a baseline and then at another point in time, ideally a year, but it could be more, could be longer. It depends on the intervention and the organization. The last bucket here is looking at achievements and resilience. So here, it looks at indicators like the percentage of women who state they've seen an increase in their contribution to household income. Again, we're not auditing people's budgets and accounts, but this is self-reported data. We're looking at things like the percentage of women who've made major purchases for the household. And then we're looking at elements like the percentage of women who are able to come up with, and we use this as a proxy, 1/20th of GNI per capita within the next 30 days. And the percentage of women who feel financially secure, because as we know, a lot of these elements are these kind of psychosocial resilience elements really contribute and bolster and interact with the financial inclusion interventions. So these were very important to include to our group of experts. Again, this is in the brief, so feel free to download the brief, take a look. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me or any of the authors, Anthony Koning and Joanna Ledgerwood. We'll also have some time for Q&A, and you can post questions now in the chat as we go, and we will try to answer as many of them as possible. So moving on to the next slide. The last one here from me is just to give you a sense of where the indicators were tested by the CoLab partners and the context, the intervention where they were tested, and an idea of the sample size they used for this. This was the pilot that kind of test and the original testing of the feasibility of the indicators. As we see, we had Village Enterprise testing in 3 different locations using their graduation program, People's Pension Trust in Ghana. It's a personal pension scheme combined with a savings account. Davara in India, it's an Axion partner, and they were looking at their group loan and financial training product. And Banco Sol, you'll hear a lot more about that, but it was a microcredit product. And then Annapurna, also an Axion partner, as well as Banco Sol, we're looking at group loan product in India. MEDA is going to talk about their projects and products where they tested, but the original test was here in the Philippines for microcredit for agroforestry. And the last one was Women's World Banking, also testing in India, but really large sample that they were able to use, and it looked at a savings and financial literacy program. So with that, I am going to move us into the really interesting part and the focus of today. We're going to hear from our panelists. So everyone has a couple of slides, and then we're going to have just a moderated discussion before we move to the Q&A. And I just wanted to start here by asking each of them to briefly describe their financial inclusion intervention where they tested, and give you more background than I just did on the slide. I'd like to start with AJ from MEDA, so we can go to the next slide, and I will hand it over to you, AJ. Thank you.
There we go. Just needed to unmute real quick there. Thank you, Jenny, for the introduction. And just to jump in here, a little brief overview of MEDA for those of you who are not familiar. MEDA, or Mennonite Economic Development Associates, is an international economic development organization. Our mission is to create business solutions to poverty, and over the past 70 years, we've worked in 83 countries. We bring a unique market systems approach to our projects, integrating technical assistance with access to capital. I would say we're a recognized leader in blended finance, combining capital investment with grant-based technical assistance. We also currently manage our MEDA Risk Capital Fund, which is valued at $25 million USD, as well as our MasterCard Foundation Africa Growth Fund, which is a $200 million fund of funds, specifically investing in women-led investment vehicles. You can proceed to the next slide. Moving on, I just wanted to give another quick introduction to MEDA's project in the Philippines, which is where we tested the WE indicators and administered the WE survey. So the Resilience and Inclusion through Investment for Sustainable Agricultura, or RISA. This project supports the development of the cacao market system in Mindanao. And the main goal of this project is to bolster the performance of cooperatives and SMEs involved in cacao-related enterprises by offering technical support, incentives, and market connections to enhance their performance. Key objectives of the project included increasing yield, revenues, and net income, but also paying special attention to integrating environmental, gender, and social inclusion considerations into business operations for these cooperatives and SMEs. In all of our work with cooperatives and SMEs, the RISA project integrates women's economic empowerment, social inclusion, specifically inclusion of Indigenous populations, and environmental sustainability. You can jump to the next slide. So just a little bit more about the specific financial inclusion intervention where we tested the tool. We piloted the WE survey tool with women farmer suppliers of our partner SME, Kennemer, through their financing arm, Agronomica Finance Corporation, or AFC. MEDA's partnership with Kennemer and AFC is part of an agroforestry development project that Kennemer is implementing. It includes a microfinance component specifically to support women cacao farmer associations. Kennemer is located in the Paquibato district in Davao City, which is where they recognize that many of their farmer suppliers, many of whom are Indigenous women, face significant challenges in accessing both financing and markets due to the remote location. Also difficult terrain and limited infrastructure. As we know, this often makes accessible and affordable financial services difficult to find for many farmers, but especially women who have collateral constraints and also can't afford the high transaction costs that come with the commercial financial service providers who are located far from their communities. So Kennemer, the SME, saw an opportunity to provide their own product. So to address these issues, Kennemer partnered with MEDA to provide an accessible microfinance loan product exclusively for women farmers, at least initially, to support their agroforestry businesses and implement environmentally sustainable practices in their cacao production. At MEDA, and especially in our RISA project, we recognize the connections between women's economic empowerment, social inclusion, and conservation, and designed this project with Kennemer and AFC to work at that intersection. So as part of this microfinance component of the project, an estimated 1,200 women farmers will be provided with financing to support their agroforestry microenterprise activities. There's a focus on utilizing the loans on carbon trading businesses specifically, but in collaboration with the farmers with the design of the project, the decision was made to make funds available for other types of businesses as well. The average loan size is 10,000 pesos or about 200 USD. And this is accompanied by financial literacy training to promote a savings scheme, but also loan recipients will be supported with market linkages through the SME themselves. So the WE in Financial Inclusion Survey was conducted as a baseline for women farmers who were clients of Kennemer but haven't yet accessed the microloans. So far we just have the baseline, but we intend to do another round of data collection in the next couple months. The same size for the baseline, the size of the baseline was about 47 women farmers. As I mentioned, they're potential recipients of the loan product that's being rolled out. This baseline was conducted in July and August of 2024. And we did use the entire survey tool. I think other panelists will speak to incorporating it in other evaluations, but we did use the entire survey tool because we felt that it was important to get a broad understanding of the profile of our participants. We also wanted to be able to do this because we combined the data collection with project activities like trainings rather than other data collection activities to limit the survey fatigue. In terms of participant profiles, respondents were predominantly from rural areas, but we did have some diversity in age. Also 50% identified as being from Indigenous people groups. And the baseline revealed some significant gaps in financial autonomy and equitable labor distribution, especially at the household level, which had some significant impacts on agency. So, for example, 87% of the respondents believed that women's opinions were respected within their household and communities, but only 40% of them reported an increased financial contributions compared to the previous year. And household responsibilities remained predominantly managed by women, which really limited their ability to engage in income generating activities of their own rather than just supporting on family farms. So we found this really valuable information because it gives us insight into the sort of targeted interventions that might lead to improved economic empowerment as a result of the financial inclusion intervention. So I will stop there and pass it on to the next panelist.
Thanks, AJ. Yeah, Justin, we've got from Women's World Banking, if we can pass it over to you. Be great.
Great, yes. Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for inviting me and Women's World Banking to participate in this webinar. And also thank you to everyone who's attending. So this is a great endeavor, and we're happy to be a part of it and hope that everyone continues to show great interest in this and uses what we produced in their work going forward. So where we used these WE indicators was with a impact evaluation on a study, the Jandan Plus study in India that we had ongoing. And just for some background, for those who don't know, Women's World Banking as an organization partners with financial institutions and policymakers to design solutions for women. So the Jandan Plus solution fits within that purpose. So let's go to the next slide. We also, in our work, in our impact evaluation work, we do measure women's economic empowerment, and we had a pre-existing framework through which we were measuring that. And this is the lens through which we look. We view this. It's a 4-pillar framework based on the Martha Chen model of relational change, material change, cognitive change, and perceptual change. And indicators fall within those 4 pillars: material change, changes in income and assets, ability to cover basic needs, changes in cognitive change, changes in awareness of financial products and services, knowledge of how to use them or that they exist, as well as skills, being able to use different products and services. And perceptual change in self-confidence, and being able to go to a bank branch and withdraw money without any help, or using a digital banking platform or mobile wallets. As well, falling under perceptual change would be financial security, your ability to weather shocks, financial shocks as an example that falls under that. And then lastly, relational change, where we look at decision-making within the household and participation in those decisions. And that could include control over income, like personal income, household income, decisions on where to save, how much to save, how to spend savings, same thing like incoming remittances, control over the decisions that go into those spending decisions. So this is like the framework that we have, and it aligned well with the framework that was developed out of the FinEquity collab that underpins these indicators. So it was really nice to see that we're both thinking the same way about how to do this. Okay, can we go to the next slide? So more specifically about where exactly we did this field testing for the collab indicators. The Jandan Plus intervention, which is the Pradhan Mantri Jandan Plus program, is an extension of the original PMJDY program that was launched in India in 2014. So the PMJDY program originally provided basic services. Purpose was basic services for the unbanked in India. And it was very successful. Financial inclusion rates improved or increased dramatically from 2014 through to 2020. And a kind of a lucky offshoot of this is that, you know, rose-colored lenses, when COVID hit, it increased the ability of the Indian government's ability to deliver G2P payments, those support payments that help mitigate the impacts of COVID, at least the financial impacts of COVID. So it was widely used during that period. But since then, a lot of these accounts have become dormant. And not only have accounts become dormant, but those that aren't dormant, many of them are also now only being used as a cash out channel. So people are going to the bank branch or going to another access point because they're getting a government support payment, a G2P payment into their account or a remittance payment into their account, and they're just withdrawing the money. And that's the only way in which they're using their bank account, their Jan Dhan account. So we set out to work with public sector banks to design a solution that activated accounts, encouraged people to save more frequently, as well as to broaden their exposure to financial services. So the solution that the Women's World Banking team came up with, that we designed in working with these public sector banks, was this suite of efforts that included financial literacy camps where Women's World Banking trained staff met with villagers typically, or in some urban areas, and walked through some financial literacy training, including the importance of saving for financial shocks, the importance of saving for old age, and it was supported by the public sector bank local staff as well. The idea here was that not only would people who attended these literacy camps learn about the solution, but that they would also go and talk about it amongst their networks, and so that we would kind of reach even more people as a result of that. As well, within India, there's the Banking Correspondent Network. So these local BCs, they're essentially extensions of bank branches that go a little bit further into that last mile. They just, where bank branches can't serve because it's just a bit too remote, or there's not enough customers to sustain a full bank branch, these BCs exist to then service the customers in those areas. So we essentially use the BC network as the primary way of delivering and supporting this solution. So the key component of the solution was this small savings scheme. Depending on which public sector bank, in this case, it was setting a savings goal of 200 rupees for 5 months. If a person succeeded in that saving that 200 rupees per month for 5 months, totaling 1,000 rupees, then they were kind of granted this improved chance of getting an overdraft facility or a zero interest loan. They weren't guaranteed to get it, but because they had shown their ability to regularly deposit, it was sort of shows a in a sense like a credit history that shows that they'd be able to repay if they did borrow. So another key component of this is that it wasn't just that small savings scheme. I said earlier about the BCs. We also directly trained the BCs to not just market the account, but then also to support it going forward. So they were trained to, if somebody came in who didn't know about the Jan Dhan Plus account, to then market it to them. As well, for those who had opened the account and were saving monthly, the BCs were trained to track how that savings was going And that, say for instance, it's the 3rd month or the 4th month, it's getting towards the end of that, they haven't yet reached their 200 rupees for the month. The BC would then inform that saver, hey, look, you need to deposit another 50 rupees in order to reach your threshold for the month going forward. So it wasn't a single point of intervention. It was this suite of efforts here that combined to form the full model. Okay, next slide. This just shows essentially who we did survey. The study was set in West Bengal and Assam. It was all women, and as well, it was split between rural and urban within both states. The specific split was fairly even. It was a randomized design. And because it was a randomized controlled trial, we also have a control group and a treatment group. And so I've included there the crosstabs of states, urban setting, treatment and control. And so we had a really robust sample size of 2,883 women who had completed the survey and completed responding to the questions that we did include from the list of indicators. So I think that wraps up my portion for now. And so I will now turn it back to Jenny. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, and I think just to comment, women's world banking was one of the original frameworks we looked at back when we first started mapping out this, where indicators existed, what types of frameworks. So, Justin's and women's world banking has been a great thought partner from the beginning. So yes, they are very well aligned. Now I'm going to turn to Denise. So she will be presenting in Spanish. The presentation is in English, just so that we were able to sort of facilitate everyone's understanding. But she's from Banco Sol, and so yes, she'll be speaking in Spanish. You don't need to do anything. If you came in late, you do need to make sure that you've chosen a channel at the bottom here on the bottom row of your Zoom. You've selected the channel of the language you want to hear this presentation in. So if you'd like to listen in Spanish, feel free. But if you don't speak Spanish, then please choose the English channel and we will have interpretation for you. And also be sure to mute the original audio so that you don't hear multiple voices. Okay, Denise, ahora te lo paso para presentar sus láminas.
Denise, now it's your turn to show the slide. Thank you very much, Jenny. Jennifer and all the panelists, this webinar has been very interested and we are very pleased to be in such a special event. I would like to talk to you a little bit about Banco Sol. Banco Sol has existed for 33 years and it is the first regulated bank in the world. It is a leader in financial inclusion in Bolivia. We offer products and services that are financial to small companies, small entrepreneurs. It is a bank specialized in microfinances, as I said before. We are the only bank that is a member of the main responsible banks of Unify, and we count with a certification for client protection. Based on our sustainability strategy, we promote gender equality with our program that is integral, which is called Avanza Mujer. Through this program, we promote sustainable progresses. Last year, in 2024, we made the first mission of the gender bond in Bolivia. I'm going to talk about this later. We have 4,000... Excuse me? Shall I continue?
The slides are not advancing. Sorry to interrupt, Denise. Yeah. Le tienes que decir a Sofía cuando quieres que avance las láminas.
Please tell Sofía when do you want her to move on the slides.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So Banco Sol has worked collaboratively with the economic empowerment of the women with financial inclusion. So our first pilot program, we have measured 4,405 women that are leaders of businesses, of microcredit businesses in 2024. And our participation or collaborative participation allows us in one way or another to support the development of methodologies that are innovative, that can help measure the impact with these pioneer tools, such as the one that FinEquity has. This also serves as a reference for other institutions that are looking for this type of tools and that can apply the tools to measure the impact on their projects. Likewise, what we are looking for is to generate a key evidence and statistic data that will help us make decisions. Please, the next slide. As Banco Sol, as I said before, we have a program that is called Avanza Mujer. This is a program that has a financial offer and a value-added offer for women who are leaders of businesses here in Bolivia. Through this strategy, in 2024, in the middle of last year, we issued for the first time one bond of Bolivian gender. This is the first mission in our country, with the goal of reaching 4,500 operations destined to women that are leaders of businesses, with an amount of 30 million for financial help. This is an alignment for 5 goals, sustainable goals. This mission has the guarantee of 50% of the bid invest. And we are getting ready for our next mission for this year. The total of this fund has been placed in February. We have concluded in February. We have reached the 4,500 operations, and we have reached the 30 million funds. So in the next slide, please, the next slide. There we can see how we measured the implementation of the FinEquity tool. We have had a baseline of 3,694 women that have filled out the form. That is 82% of the women have received the funds of the bonds of 4,500 women between August and September 2024. And we estimate that we are going to show the poll again as of October, November of this year to be able to see the evolution. And later on, I will show you about the results. And what we're looking for is that through this measurement, we can reinforce the value-added offer that wants women to get economically empowered through the use of tools that are provided to them for them to develop better their businesses. And we have also identified the fact that it is important to make focused decisions based on topics such as FinEquity indicators. Another important pillar of our program, we have the financial solutions that are the offer of products and financial services that are adequate and that are adapted to the needs and to the aspirations of the women. Avanza Mujer was born from a project after listening to the needs of the clients, to the women, to be able to give them an adequate offer. Likewise, what we want to do is to empower their economical impact. And with this tool, we believe that we're going to have good results and that we're going to measure this impact. In Bolivia, we do not have many tools. The tools are very scarce. We do not have measuring tools for the social impact. So for the gender bonus, we have had this great challenge. And we have seen the need to apply the FinEquity tool. Likewise, in the world and in the region, in Latin America, the green bonds do have a clear impact. The social impact doesn't have that importance. So with the next slide, I will close my presentation. And later on, as I said before, I'm going to show you the indicators that we've been able to rescue with our baseline. And in Banco Sol, we say that when one woman makes progress, we all make progress. When a woman keeps it up, we all move forward. Now I will give the microphone to Jenny. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Denise. Thank you so much. And that was a great, inspiring slide to wrap up on. So I really appreciate it. And yes, we will be returning to Denise shortly because she'll be able to share some of the results from that baseline, as she mentioned, and we have some great graphs that they put together to share with you all. One version of how you could use, one way you could use these indicators within your organization. Now I'd like to go back, let's see, apologies, I have so many windows open. So now that you've heard from everyone about their, the interventions where they've tested and what that process looked like, what the interventions looked like, I'd like to hear a little bit more about, whether, if you didn't touch on this already, is this something that you do on a regular basis, as part of your regular data collection, or was this part of an evaluation? I think that most of you already touched on this, but if we could just take the presentation down, please, Sophia, stop screen sharing and invite the other panelists back up. Yes, thank you, so that we're all spotlighted. So we have Justin, AJ, and Denise. Yep, we're all here. Okay, great. So maybe I'll start with you, Justin. You talked a little bit about how this was incorporated, but if there's anything else want to mention, I think you were unique in the sense that you did not use the full set of 19 indicators. So maybe you could speak to that, please.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, so I had mentioned that we nested this within an existing impact evaluation, and that more specifically, we had already conducted our baseline survey prior to when we figured that we would be able to do this. And so it was included in our endline survey. And so as a result of that, some of the questions that were on the the list of questions to test were quite similar to ones that we had asked in the baseline. Mm-hmm. And we can't change, like in these kinds of evaluations, you need to ask the question the exact same way you did at baseline. So that kind of eliminated that set of questions because we didn't want to be duplicative. As well, there were, it was a fairly extensive survey to begin with. And so we had some concerns around survey length. So we didn't want to add in some of the questions that were beyond the framework that we have and what we were expecting, out the intervention might impact. So in the end, we went with 12 of the questions. And sort of a residual of that meant that we couldn't, some of the other participants were able to kind of track how long it took to answer these questions or ask these questions. Mm-hmm. And since it was kind of broken up and in different parts, we weren't really able to contribute in that way. But we did have those 12 questions that we were able to test.
That's great. And just to say, in the paper that we talk about why we developed and why we proposed this holistic set of indicators, but equally important is what Justin just mentioned, that if your organization has been using a very similar indicator and you've tested it yourself, by all means, you don't want to have two indicators, multiple questions on a survey asking the same thing. So that was why it was great to have the Women's World Banking experience where it was then incorporated into to their existing set of indicators and measurement framework. Alternatively, I want to go to you, AJ, and in MEDA's case, as we heard, you did test the entire set. Maybe you could speak a little bit more to why that was and why you made that decision.
Sure. So in our regular data collection at MEDA, we do measure aspects of women's economic empowerment. It does depend on the nature of the project. We've done a number of WE-specific studies in the past, but not necessarily specifically as a result of financial inclusion interventions. So that was an opportunity. This tool provided us with an opportunity to dig deeper into that aspect. So We did initially test the tool with 35 women farmers that were involved in the project in different capacities, because we had a number of different financial inclusion activities throughout the project that were in flex. But once we did identify the project with Kennemer specifically and their microfinance loan, we decided to do another round of testing, and we made that the baseline. So that was the results with the 47 women that I've been mentioning previously. And we wanted to conduct that baseline before the rollout of the product that we helped them put together, so that we could measure specifically the impact of that product. So the original testing of the tool was combined with our annual survey, so the set of 35. We noticed that it took quite a lot of time to gather all of this data together with our other annual survey questions, and was pretty time consuming for our clients. So when we decided to do another round of data collection as the baseline, we did use the tool as a separate evaluation. Both times we asked all of the questions, but I think we had some improved results as the second round, or the baseline, was a lot more focused. We decided to use the entire tool and selected this specific initiative with Kennemer because it was a good opportunity to look at different aspects of women's economic empowerment, and linking it to the project focused on environmental sustainability and social inclusion was also an important addition for us. While there was some overlap in our annual survey questions, we wanted to be sure that we had all the information we needed from this rather small targeted group of the overall project participants, which were the women who were potential recipients of this agroforestry loan product. And pass it back.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that helps a lot, I think, to give folks a sense of, when you might use a subset versus the entire set. Thinking a little bit about the length of time. It is a long survey. It is asking a lot of women customers to take the time to take the survey. So just keeping all of those things in mind as you're going through your own decision-making process about how and when to use the survey and indicators. So I think for that's sort of good on that question. We have sort of the two different ways that this was tested and our collaborative learning experience. But now I'd like to just ask a little bit more of Denise here. If you can share with us your experience calculating the indicators once you had the data from either from your test or from this most recent exercise you went through. If you can just talk a little bit about the statistical tools you used and why you chose those tools. I think for folks in the audience, there's guidance that's part of the paper, but there's not, a Stata or Excel tool. There's guidance, and then it's up to you. So I'd like to hear from Denise, and then I'll also just check with Justin, because I know they did it a little differently. So. Okay, gracias, Denise.
Yes, of course, Jennifer. Yes, as I told you before, we made our first measurement in 2024 with 400 surveys. We did our exercise, which consisted in the following. Once we had the specific project of the women and with the placement of the gender fund, we had 3,694 women who filled out the survey. 82% of them participated. And the tool that we used was Excel. We worked directly with the data analytics, with the Excel, which is quite flexible. The methodology is very flexible because it allows us to use an Excel spreadsheet. But of course, when you start working with more data, then you have to start to use other tools, other statistic tools that help you facilitate the analysis, and it saves you time as well. For the number of surveys that we carried out, we worked perfectly with Excel. We carried out our analysis for the calculation of the 19 indicators, and the graphs also allowed us to understand where we had the gaps of opportunities of work in order to support women so they could empower more. And I think that in the future, we're going to form other tools that will allow us to have an analysis that is more diverse, with more options, with more opportunities that we can apply.
No, that's great. And we are going to hear a little bit about that, the gaps. And so we'll come back to that. But Justin, if you could just speak, briefly on what you used and why.
Yes, certainly. I know there is a slide that would be available to put up on the screen if we want to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So yes, Jenny, as you said, I used Stata in creating the indicators from the questions that we did ask. Again, it was just 12 of the questions, that subset. And even though for the technical audience, maybe you're more familiar with Stata, but even if you're not, like, I didn't have to use Stata to do this. Like, it's really like, these indicators are generally easy to create out of the questions that are there. It's simple renaming the variables into ones that are a little bit more intuitive to understand. Some recoding, where just some values you want them to be just like the way that they come in through the data collection. Again, to make it easier to analyze, you might want to change the value around a little bit to make it more intuitive. So, I mean, I included the little screenshot there of the code, not to show people how to create the indicators. I don't even really want you looking, you don't have to look that closely at it, but really just to show, like, that's it. Like, that was me doing all 12 indicators that we did just in that block of code right there. So yeah, like I did it this way because we were already analyzing the full study. And so Stata's already open. It's easy to open a do file and just, the data set's already open, just do this and create the indicators. So yeah.
Great. Now that makes sense. And I know that MEDA also used Excel. So, there's a lot of variety in the way people approach the calculating and, analyzing the data. I am going to move us to my last question. I know that I had asked the panelists to talk about some challenges. I think they touched on some of those already. And we might come back to AJ to talk a little bit about local language issues, or not issues, but how they approach local languages. But for just the sake of time, I would like to move us to the last question on next steps. So, we heard about the testing, we heard about, a little bit about what next, but I'd really like to hear from all three of you, starting with Denise. You've obviously used this, applied this again, much larger sample size. If you could pull up Denise's slides. Yeah, here we are, next steps. And just, kind of quickly walk us through what you learned and how you're going to use this information. Thank you.
Of course, I will. This information allows us to have a baseline, as I said before. We have been able to reach a great number of surveys. And here we can see that in the 3 sections, we have 3 slides that I'm going to show you very quickly. Here we have our baseline. Regarding the direct results, resources, and results, we can see the gaps that we have. We have one important gap, for example, which is the equality of the household work. We see one work opportunity there. During these months, up until the next measurement, we have to be able to approach these sensibilization lectures regarding the household economy, in order to improve that percentage, in order to have a higher male participation in household chores. There we see percentages. We see the economic participation. Obviously, the women with which we have made this survey are the owners of their own businesses. We can see that they are empowered regarding the economic participation, and also regarding the trust in the use of financial products. We also see the percentages regarding how they trust the credits, the bank accounts, the digital banking, and the insurance policies. If we see the next slide, please, we can see in the next slide the intermediate results. On the baseline, They are related to reliability, decision-making processes, and we see another interesting gap, which is the mobility gap. Here we have a low percentage. Here we can see the co-responsibility in the household chores, to be able to support the women in the house, for them to have flexibility. Also the use of time. We want women to have more use of time. And we can see the percentages very quickly. You can see the percentages of how many women feel free to make activities that generate income, and how they can adjust their daily schedule. Women that can take their time for hobbies, for example. So here we can see in this chart how the indicators of these results are showed. And in the last slide, we can see the final results of our baseline. We can see how we are doing with the hearing women, how women feel heard, if they have a voice. We have a good percentage. We have 89% of respect for the community versus a 57% where we haven't had assets purchased. But we are sure that with the bonds and that with the credits that they have received, they will be able to make the purchase of assets, because the credits that we have lent them for these projects are productive credits for them to make investments. The same thing with the income generation. We believe that through the tools, through the trainings of the value addeds in digital marketing tools, and with other trainings regarding sales and customer service, these women will be able to improve their sales, and they will improve their incomes, of course. And also we can see a very important opportunity in the level of safety, financial safety, in financial health and financial education. We want those women to be able to work for saving for their future, for their old age. We want them to have insurance policies for medical expenses. So there are percentages that are below 80%. So we're going to find several opportunities, and we're going to approach the following steps with sensitivities, lectures, with trainings, with strengthening of information, so that our clients can reach goals and so that we can see improvements. We need more time to measure the improvement, of course, but we must have a process that is more of a accompanying process. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Denise. And this presentation will be shared afterwards. There's a lot of rich information on these slides, so feel free to ask questions of Denise in the chat. But I'd like to turn to Justin and AJ now. So, Justin, just to hear a little bit about how you're going to incorporate, or will you incorporate this into your regular monitoring, how, and why, I guess,
Yeah,
and we'll
I mean, we see the value of measuring women's economic empowerment in all of our work. As I mentioned, the John Donne Plus model was this RCT impact evaluation. These types of large projects, it makes a lot of sense to incorporate the WE indicators, where we have the resources to hire a survey firm, to hire surveyors, to go out and recruit respondents and ask them this 45-minute long survey. Where we can do that, we will continue to do so. But we've also seen that there's an opening for a lot of value in trying to understand the levels of women's economic empowerment across all of our projects and solutions. And because we want to do that a little bit more nimbly, we're working on developing what we're calling the WE barometer, the Women's Economic Empowerment Barometer, which the idea being it's a standardized survey tool that we are looking to deploy in all of our solutions that we're doing. We view it very much as a complement to the set of indicators and set of questions. It's just The idea being for financial service providers, impact investors, donors, researchers who don't have the available resources to do a larger scale survey, that this low-cost tool could be quite valuable, especially when it's delivered through lighter touch methods such as interactive voice response surveys or WhatsApp or SMS conversations. And there's other ways of kind of keeping it cheaper too. Just using existing FSP staff is one such method. The tool itself, we are field testing it now. We feel quite confident in the value of the tool as it stands. It's around 20 questions, depending on the context. Like if you're studying, or if you have a savings solution or a savings product you want to test or something like that. It depends on which questions you end up asking. We're looking to internally field test 3 more deployments in 2025, and with the ultimate goal of making this publicly available, open source for anyone who wants to use it. Again, we view a lot of value in measuring women's economic empowerment. We want people who, if you are able to measure the broader swath, like please do so. And if you're a little bit more constrained, I think this is a nice complement to what's been done. So
Yep.
those who are interested, you can reach out to us on the email there below, webarometer@womensworldbanking.org. Yeah, we're interested in collaborating. Yeah, we're sensible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is great. And please do reach out to this email. But this is wonderful because this is exactly how, we hope that people will use it in the way that it makes sense, the way it works for your organization. And I will now want to give the last word here to AJ. She's got a slide after this one to talk to us about MEDA's future plans.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll certainly be sharing what we've learned through the tool with the SME who is providing the financial product, Kennemer, for them to better understand the impact of their product and also provide them with some nuanced recommendations on how to deepen that impact. We'll also be providing high-level results with other financial institution partners that we have in the project. For them, we're providing technical assistance on gender-focused ESG technical support. So we plan to share our experience with the survey with them to support their development of market assessments and action plans to inform the design of their financial products and services as well. And also teach them on utilizing the tool so that they can administer it themselves if they would like, and give them some recommendations on how to implement some activities that might deepen their impact. The initial findings of the baseline study highlighted some encouraging signs of progress, particularly in financial goal setting and decision-making input for our clients, but we still found some significant gaps in financial autonomy, financial security. We also found gaps in access to economic resources and opportunities as a result of inequitable distribution of household labor, which is really similar to what Denise was sharing to the results of Banco Sol. So this information was really helpful for us as we continue to engage with Kennemer and other clients and their clients and our delivery of technical assistance to them and the other financial service providers in the cacao value chain. So once we have the N-line survey, we'll certainly be sharing that information as well to improve the support that we give to them and that they N-line give to their farmers to improve their financial product and service offerings and deepen their impact. So we also plan to utilize this tool in other projects. We've socialized it in our internal gender and environment communities of practice, and I'm in discussions with other projects that are interested in testing the tool in their own activities. So hoping to move forward in that way as well.
Yeah, that's all sounds really good. And it's not just tools for financial institutions. Of course, that's one big way to use this information, as Denise was describing, and how to support women climate clients, and also looking at, how to support them through better services and products. But there's many other ways that this information can be used and inform our work, whether we're, donors or working, in a working group, or other stakeholders in the sector. And that's really what the paper goes into as well. But I was really happy to hear all of these examples just within MEDA. So thank you, AJ, for sharing that. I do want to turn, we have, about 15 minutes left. We do have some time for audience Q&A. We've seen your questions coming in. My colleagues have put them together for me in a shared document, so to make it a little bit easier. I do want to start off actually with a question that someone shared through email in advance, and I just saw it this morning. So this question is for all of the panelists, but I think they specifically mentioned women's world banking. So the question is from Sandra Maya, she's a law student at Georgetown. Her question is, what solutions are we looking at to address financial abuse that stems from financial inclusion? While development partners like Women's World Banking have put together initiatives like the GROW program in Uganda, women's access to affordable financing has come with challenges of having access to cash. These include theft and abuse from partners. Do you believe that digital financial inclusion is the way to go? But I think before we get to that, maybe just thinking about that as an element, Justin, and then, AJ or Denise, is this issue something you're looking at and measuring in any way? Because I know we don't have a specific indicator in our set.
Yeah. So this type of like gender-based violence or interpersonal violence in this case, it's something that we've identified as a avenue which we want to research. It's not something up till now we've done, but we have internally made strategic decisions about where we want to go, and in that direction, and better understanding it is one of those directions. So yeah, please do ask that question again in a year, and hopefully we'll have a good answer for you.
Thank you. And I mean, just to add to that, FinEquity last year did a lot of work, exploratory, I'll say, in looking at financial and economic abuse specifically. So there was a work stream. I can share in the chat in a minute some resources from folks that have been working on this more. Ramin comes to mind. Bobby Gray is a great resource. There's many others. So I'll pop that into the chat. But I don't know if AJ, you have anything else, or Denise, you want to say, or if we should just move on to the next question. I think is probably fine at this point.
I can jump in really quick.
Okay.
So we've actually included a lot of awareness around gender-based violence and specifically economic violence in our RISA project. We've engaged local government and civil society stakeholders to come alongside and partnership around raising that awareness. We certainly saw that as a risk in any economic empowerment programming, and certainly with financial inclusion. The second part of that question around digital inclusion, I don't think digital inclusion necessarily takes away that risk. It just sort of morphs it. We did have indicators or questions around privacy and women's ability to use mobile devices to access finance and that sort of thing. So that's certainly a risk when you're talking about gender-based violence related to financial inclusion. So it is something that we're looking at closely, that we didn't initially in the project, and we've really pushed that moving forward to make sure that our clients have the connections they need, the referral pathways they need to report and respond to violence, but also just awareness raising to understand what economic violence is specifically. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation about what that looks like. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great for adding that. And I will, as I mentioned, if you can share as well, I'll share some of the resources from FinEquity in the chat. But I would like to move to one of the other questions here. There was a question from Steve Peachy asking if anyone is benchmarking their own WE results against the WE indicators that can be proxied and are increasingly consciously built into financial inclusion surveys like FinDex, FinScope, FinAccess, et cetera. You know, I know Denise spoke a little bit about benchmarking. If they are planning to do that, I don't know if, you know, if you want to start, Denise, and then maybe either Justin or AJ, if you want to jump in.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Well, the benchmarking that we have done is that unfortunately here we do not have tools for measuring the social impact. So I believe that what we are looking for is to be precursors for other institutions to participate in this initiative. And with the flexibility of this tool, we want to adapt it to different types of institutions. Like Justin said, they have taken into account certain indicators. So we do not necessarily work with all the questions or indicators. So we hope that in the future, we can have other institutions in order to make a benchmarking of indicators for the progress of the impact measurement.
Okay, great. And if you want to add something, if not, I have many more questions, so we could move to the next one.
I can do just a quick response.
Okay, yeah, please
Yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, the short answer is yes. We frequently ask the financial resilience questions from the FinDex and benchmark against that where it makes sense to. But it is like, you know, to get a little bit in that technical side of things, like for that, you know, the solution that I was talking about for this, you know, we're not doing, it's not nationally representative. So it doesn't make sense to benchmark to a nationally representative survey, but it still is, you know, it gives nice context and we do it where we can. I will also say that the purpose of this FinEquity set of questions is to harmonize across, like going forward, to make that kind of benchmarking and checking a lot easier to do. Because these questions across these different surveys had been asked in like slightly different ways, the idea being if we all ask in the same way, it'll make that sort of like comparability easier to do.
Thank you, Justin. Yes, I should have made that point more explicit at the top of the presentation, but that was where the original, you know, desire to harmonize definitions and indicators did come from, the fact that these things, these elements of we are being measured in many different ways. And as AJ also mentioned, it's also about looking specifically at financial, you know, through increased financial inclusion, not just larger we. There's obviously a lot of work that's gone into measuring women's economic empowerment more generally. I would like to ask a question here, and maybe AJ, I think you would be well positioned to answer from MEDA's perspective, but there's a question that came in through email as well from Santher Machabin from Cameroon, Image Nation PR Agency and Africa Union's panel for future members. His question is, or their question is, given that the informal sector contributes approximately 30 to 65% of Cameroon's GDP, and women make up the significant portion of this sector, how can we better measure, quantify the economic empowerment of women in the informal sector, particularly within the context of financial inclusion? Are there any specific tools or methodology to capture these contributions more accurately? And how can these insights inform policies to enhance their access to financial services and overall economic participation? I can give a response after, but I'd love to hear from, you know, you, AJ. I mean, you use this with folks in the informal sector, so.
Yeah, I think
work?
I think this tool is a perfect example of a type of tool that can be used in the informal sector. MEDA works quite often in the informal sector, maybe just as much. We also do a number of activities to formalize businesses when they're ready, but particularly financial inclusion activities. A lot of times we are working in the informal sector with savings groups, also a lot with value chain finance. So identifying the market actors that are best positioned to provide appropriate financial services. We don't want to push entrepreneurs into commercial loans when they're not ready. Their businesses aren't large enough to absorb that level of loan. So so yeah, I would say this tool is a perfect example of a tool that can be used quite well in the informal sector. Oh, you're muted, Jenny.
Thank you. It's just talking with my hands. When we were first developing these, you know, the original framework, original set of indicators, we did, you know, think about this, and we even created a different theory of change for, you know, would it look different if this were informal versus a formal financial intervention or digital? Did these, you know, did that make a difference in terms of the indicators that you would want to look at? And we ultimately, as a group, decided it did not. And I think AJ, you know, covered all the reasons why. So yes, you can use these tools for measuring women's economic empowerment in the informal sector. So I know that we have many, many more questions, and as usual, we never have enough time to answer all of them. I will answer one quick question on the time. Anne-Marie Van Swinderen asked how long the tool takes. I think several folks spoke to this, but in our experience, it took anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. You know, AJ had the experience of, you know, having to translate into, MEDA had to translate into local languages, other partners the same. So, you know, as the enumerators got faster, I think it was faster, but that was, you know, really what we saw was 25 to 30 minutes. And I think, you know, we'll have to just try and respond to you all by email, or, you know, I'll send out something posted on the landing page, and we can perhaps address a couple more of these questions. So I really appreciate them. I do just want to, in our last couple minutes, you know, be sure I get to thank everyone, but also to ask each of the panelists in 30 seconds or less. I know I said a minute, but now you get 30. Please just, you know, final words of wisdom, advice for others using the tools, anything you want to add that you didn't get to say before. We'll start with AJ first, please, and then Justin and Denise. Thank you.
So I think my first word of advice would be obviously to test the tool and iterate as needed to fit your purposes. As Jenny alluded to, I think enumerator training and language is incredibly important. Studies often include sensitive questions, and it's important for enumerators to understand the questions they're asking and feel comfortable with the responses they might hear and know how to respond. Similarly, language is important for agency and rights related questions. Particularly, it's important to understand the nuance behind the questions and allow for participants to respond in the language that they're most comfortable speaking in. So we recognized a difference between when we initially tested the tool and when we conducted the baseline in enumerators' comfort in administering the tool, because they had some practice and they were able to fine tune the language. And we made sure to work with enumerators that spoke English, Tagalog, and the local dialects. So that was a really important learning for us, particularly, as I mentioned, just because of the nuance behind some of these questions and the sensitivity. So that would be my word of advice.
Thank you, AJ. And for you, Justin, briefly.
Yes, I would add, having been a participant in the early working group and then the collab, it's been a very privileged position to see how much effort and how many people have had input into this. In particular, on the technical side, seeing Innovations for Poverty Action as the technical implementer who helped really make sure that these questions are attenuated well, and that they're actually answering what we're hoping to answer. I think that for where we're using these questions, we can all stand behind them as being, you know, gold standard level questions, platinum level questions. So I encourage everyone to use them.
Thank you, Justin. And lastly, over to you, Denise. Final words.
Yes, of course. Well, the advice that I would give you is that since we come from different countries and we come from different languages and contexts, it is very important to understand the questions well and to contextualize them so that when we answer the surveys with the women, they can understand the questions. We don't want them to feel uncomfortable when answering the questions with trust. We want to find a reliability, a trust space for them to feel free to answer the questionnaire or the survey. These surveys are a powerful tool that will contribute, like Justin and AJ said, to harmonize the questions so that we can start to have the benchmarks that will allow us to enrich ourselves with a whole ecosystem that wants to support and to close these gaps regarding the gender empowerment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. Yeah, that is a super important point that I did not make strongly enough, but these the surveys need to be contextualized, and everyone spoke to that a bit. But you know, there are cases where some questions you will take out, some indicators even, and there's guidance on that in the working paper as to why you might consider not asking questions around mobility, for example. We saw that with some of the partners. It really didn't make a difference with their population, the women they were working with, so they will probably exclude that going forward. I do just want to, yes, okay, we've got the slide here, thanking everybody. And just, you know, again, this was this would not have been possible, you know. CGAP convened the collab and also the working group that preceded it through FinEquity community. We worked very closely with IPA on all of this, and I want to thank them. Many folks at IPA that were involved, Elliot and Tanvi, Isabella, all of the partners, as you see their logos. I don't know that everyone's here. I invited them all, and their contributions were invaluable to this work and the effort and everything you heard today. Lastly, just want to thank the panelists. I know I've had lots of calls with you and lots of everything, so lots of prep went into this. Thank you so much. Thank you, MEDA, especially for bringing this to our attention and getting this on the agenda and at this the Congress on Women. So thank you very much for all of the support from the MEDA team and also our advisory group and everyone at who supported us throughout this process. So and of course the participants, thank you all for joining, staying on. I know we went over. There will be a survey that pops up as you exit. Please take a minute if you have time to give us some feedback. And that's it. So thanks everybody and enjoy the rest of your day. And please reach out if you have more questions.